What's up, champions? I'm coming at you today with a video on how to get better mixdowns using headphones. Specifically, we're going to be using the reference plugin for headphones by the good folks over at Sonarworks. Over the next few minutes, we're going to set the stage and give you some background info on the pros and cons of working in headphones, as well as some of the common problems you'll come up against. Then we're going to dig into how to fix these problems using this software so you can get your headphones as flat as possible, and evaluate how well this setup actually works. So let's buckle up and dive right in.
The first thing we'll touch on is why you would want to consider working in headphones in the first place. I'll be super brief here and just give you the Coles notes. Budget. High-end reference monitor speakers are much more expensive than high-end reference headphones. Bad room acoustics. A lot of the rooms you're mixing in are far from ideal and have all kinds of issues like nulls and frequency buildups and standing waves and flutter echo ad nauseum that are hard to get rid of without a lot of expensive acoustic treatment and time-consuming room testing. Headphones create their own isolated environment for your ears and take the whole room out of the equation. Stereo field. Monitor speakers, when correctly set up in an equilateral triangle, have a 60-degree stereo field. On the other hand, headphones have a 180-degree stereo field. This means issues with stereo field and panning jump out at you a lot more than with monitors because you have a more extreme soundstage. Travel. If you're on the road, you can take headphones with you. It's a little harder to take your studio with you. Simplicity of design. Pretty much all reference monitor speakers use more than one driver for each channel and need a crossover network of some sort. The potential for sonic problems with this arrangement has always been a tough one for speaker designers. Headphones bypass this entirely by using a single driver for each channel. Keep in mind here, I'm not saying that you should ditch the monitors and work exclusively in headphones. I'm just pointing out some of the benefits of headphones in your mixdown and referencing process and why you would consider using them. Okay, we've heard the good, now for the bad and the ugly. Aside from all those juicy good things we just mentioned, headphones aren't all sunshine and rainbows. They do have some issues. Frequency response. Your headphones aren't flat, not even close in most cases. It varies from company to company and model to model. Some are less flat than others. Just take a look at the variation in the top 10 headphones used by Sonarworks customers. There are around 10 dB differences throughout a lot of the spectrum, and that's a pretty huge variation. Driver variation. Not all drivers are created equal. Manufacturing isn't perfect, and there are differences between drivers. This means that there's small or often not so small variations between pairs of headphones, even if they're the same make and model. Channel response. A side effect of driver variation means that there are sometimes shocking differences between the left and the right side of the same pair of headphones. Just look at this frequency response graph of a pair of Beyerdynamic DT880s. Here's the right, and here's the left. Can you imagine trying to mix and make panning and stereo field decisions when there's that huge of a difference between the left and the right? This issue seems to be much worse in headphones with a single entry cord, so keep that in mind when you're looking for and buying a pair of headphones. I'd try to get headphones with a cord that goes into each driver, like the Sennheiser HD600s. If you look at the frequency response of my cans, they're much more cohesive. Sub-roll-off. Last but not least, sub-roll-off happens because the relatively small drivers in headphones struggle with super low frequencies. You'll see a big drop-off below 60 Hz. This is a bit more prominent in open-back headphones than closed-back because of the seal they create, but open-back headphones are much better in general for mixing as long as you don't have background noise. For the record, planar magnetic headphones by companies like Odyssey seem to be much better down in the subs, but they cost a pretty penny for those bragging rates. Now let's talk in layman's terms about how these problems actually affect your mix. The whole purpose of reference monitors or headphones is that they're flat. If they're not flat, then when you're mixing, you can be chasing ghosts. For example, if you have issues with frequency response, meaning that some frequencies are accentuated and others are dipped, when an instrument plays certain notes, it's going to jump out at you, and when it plays other notes, it's going to disappear. It's just not consistent. As a mix engineer, that may cause you to overcompress the instrument or overcompensate when you're EQing it. Another example is if you have distinct differences between the left and the right, like those Beyerdynamics I showed you. You might totally mess up your stereo field and pan positions because you're hearing things that aren't actually there or missing things that are there and you should be correcting. Okay, with that said, thanks for bearing with me through that. Now that we're all on the same page and we're clear on the good, the bad, and the ugly, I want to show you the light at the end of the tunnel. If we could deal with those shortcomings, wouldn't headphones be a great option? Yeah, in my opinion, they are. So enter Sonarworks and the reference software.
Sonarworks set the lofty goal of dealing with some of these common issues you run into when using headphones for mixing. The theory was that if you could scientifically measure the frequency response of each driver and use some type of audio processing wizardry to correct for it, that you could make non-flat headphones flat. They claim to be able to do just that, so let's look into it.
Now let's get to know the Sonarworks reference plugin. It can run inside pretty much any DAW, and it's currently in version 3. Just so you're aware, they also have a full room correction system for monitor speakers, but this version of the plugin is for headphones, and we'll save the room correction conversation for another day. How it works. Reference uses advanced EQ and phase manipulation to flatten the frequency response of your headphones. To use it, you load up the plugin on your master bus or whatever output your headphones are receiving. Next, you pick your headphones from the list of supported makes and models. A lot of options are there, but obviously check their website to make sure yours are supported before buying. Let's check out the AKG K7 12 Pros. Once the calibration loads, you can see the frequency response curves. You can check out the options to view the response before correction, the actual correction applied, and the result after correction, as well as the filter phase. Average versus individual calibration. You have two options when using the plugin: average calibration and individual calibration. With average calibration, you pick from a pre-selected list of makes and models that Sonarworks has tested. This loads a correction curve that's been calculated by averaging out the deviations in that particular make and model in testing. That sets you on a better footing than you were at, but remember how earlier we were talking about the significant differences in drivers, even with the same make and model? We saw up to 10 dB variations between pairs of headphones. This doesn't account for the variation between left and the right drivers. As we saw with the Beyerdynamic DT880s I tested, that can be a big difference. For that reason, I much prefer the individual calibration. With individual calibration, you can either buy a pre-calibrated new set of cans direct from Sonarworks, or send in your cans to get tested in their lab. Either way, you get a custom calibration profile that's created and it's unique to your drivers and the specific variation your cans have on the left and the right side. In my case, I tested the individual calibration with a pair of Sennheiser HD600s. They're already pretty good headphones for mixing in their own right. They're open back, reference class, they have a dual entry cord that goes into both ear cups for a much more balanced left and right response. Let's take a look at the calibration. You get a specific custom calibration profile that you load up here. We can now see the individual left and right channels before the correction, and the custom tailored correction curves. Note that we're not seeing the huge variations you'd see in many headphones, but there are some issues to address, like the typical roll-off in the subs, a boost in the low mids, a dip around 2K, and some boosting in the highs. Extra goodies. Aside from correcting the frequency response of the headphones, Sonarworks has also included a couple of other useful functions, like the ability to define your own target frequency responses and mimic other speakers or headphones. They've got profiles in there for some common makes and models you might want to try and experiment with. To load those up, you can either go to the predefined or simulate areas and pick your flavor. They've also got a handy wet-dry parameter and mono monitoring option if you want to either blend in the amount of calibration you're getting or check your mix in mono. Finally, under advanced options, there are phase parameters that allow you to adjust between minimum phase and linear phase and dial in the amount of latency that you're able to tolerate. In minimum phase mode, you get lower latency, which is good for tracking situations, for example. In linear phase mode, latency is higher, but you also get much more consistent phase, although that can produce pre-ringing effects, especially on drums. Sonarworks recommends using the mixed phase position, which reduces pre-ringing and keeps phase issues under control. Pricing. Let's touch on pricing for a sec. Currently, the bundle of a pair of Sennheiser HD600s with individual calibration and the reference software is $517 US. To buy the same pair of exact headphones on Amazon is currently $288. So you're effectively paying $229 extra for the software and the calibration. You can get the reference software on its own for $105 US, and you can send in your headphones to get an individual calibration done for $105 as well, if you already own your own pair. Alright, now let's get down to the pros and cons of using this setup. Pros. Simple. It's a well-designed plugin and interface, quite simple and easy to use. No manual necessary, just get up and running in a few minutes. Visual. I love how visual the interface is, allowing you to see the difference before and after the correction, as well as the left and right frequency response curves. It also brilliantly helps to illustrate some of the common problems you'll see with headphones. Individual calibration. The ability to send in your specific headphones or order a new set of headphones pre-calibrated is totally ace. That way you're guaranteed to have any issues unique to your cans fixed right proper. Effective. It's measurably effective at what it does, and indeed brings your headphones closer to a flat frequency response. Additional features. I like some of the additional features like being able to simulate other headphones or speakers, as well as adjust latency for tracking and monitor in mono. Cons. Limitations to the tech. The technology appears to have its limitations. For example, the Beyerdynamic DT880s I tested first had such a big difference between the left and the right side in the subs, bass, and low mids that the correction actually created a weird stereo widening effect. To me, that was totally no bueno, so I sent them back and got my pair of Sennheiser HD600s to test instead. Average calibration. In my opinion, the average calibration just isn't very useful. I would definitely go the extra mile and do the individual calibration. The differences between headphones of the same make and model are enough that I wouldn't personally want to mix using the average presets, because you're still rolling the dice as to whether they're actually fixing the issues. If you're going to correct your headphones, do the extra work and correct them, well, correctly. Reduced output. This isn't necessarily a con, but definitely something you should be aware of. Because some frequencies are boosted in the correction, the output volume needs to be staged down to avoid clipping. This reduces your monitoring output level quite considerably in some cases. This means you might need to use a headphone amp to make up the loss in gain, and that's an extra investment. In my case, I found that my sound card had enough jam to drive the Sennheiser HD600s even with the loss in gain. Crosstalk simulation. This isn't a big one, but one of the extra features I'd really like to see is a crosstalk function. This would simulate the experience of mixing on near-field monitors where you hear sounds from the left speaker in the right ear and vice versa. You don't normally get that in headphones, and it would be a really nice plus to round out the feature set.
All right, champions, that wraps up this video. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you guys got a lot out of this little topic on getting better mixes in headphones. Don't forget to grab the free trial and check out more info on the reference plugin over at sonarworks.com. Please like, comment, subscribe to stay in touch. I'm Vespers, we're Warp Academy, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.